Okay, thank you. I'd like to call the open meeting of the Guelph Police Services Board to order, and I'd like to make the territorial acknowledgement. Today we acknowledge the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabeg peoples, on whose traditional territory we are meeting. And next item, is there a declaration of pecuniary or conflict of interest? Not seeing any. Closed session resolutions. I believe we have one resolution from the closed, and that would be from Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to bring forward a resolution for $500 from the community account to go towards Michael House, and for $4,000 to go to the camp program for the Guelph Neighborhood Support Coalition. And that's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Billings. Thank you.
And all those in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Next up on the agenda is presentation. And this will be on Guelph Police Service promotions. And Chief Kobe, I believe you're going to introduce this one.
I'm going to turn it over to him for a few minutes to just give the board some highlights as we pass our congratulations on to Arif and Dave.
Great. Thank you, Chief. And through you, Chair Carter, I would like to acknowledge both Staff Sergeant Hasham and Staff Sergeant Karen individually here. First, speaking about Staff Sergeant Hasham, I'd like to share with the board that he started with the Guelph Police Service back in June of 1990, joining our Neighborhood Services Division. During the next several years of his career, he spent time in his traffic and school safety unit, conducting education and enforcement activities to ensure safety both on the roads and the community while investigating a number of motor vehicle collisions. From there, he spent time in our high school resource unit, or our high school resource officer unit, delivering presentations to students on various topics while fostering positive relationships with our student populations. He also spent time as a detective constable in our fraud unit, where he investigated several fraud cases. On March of 2011, he was promoted to the rank of sergeant and returned to our Neighborhood Services Division, providing leadership and supervision to our uniformed members. January of 2016, he transferred to our Community Mobilization Unit as a sergeant, leading our High Enforcement Action Team, as well as our Community Resource Officers and our Downtown Team. On January of 2020, he transferred back to the Neighborhood Services Division as a sergeant, providing leadership to the uniformed members again, leading to January of 2021, when he was promoted to the rank of Staff Sergeant, remaining on the uniform platoon where he was serving, providing leadership and development now to 2 sergeants as well as uniform division members. Staff Sergeant Hasham will also be recognized this year in our virtual awards ceremony for a long service award, having completed 30 years of policing, a milestone for many of us. I'd like to congratulate Staff Sergeant Hasham on his promotion to the rank of sergeant, and I look forward to working with him in my capacity as the acting Neighborhood Services Inspector. Next, we have Staff Sergeant Caron. Staff Sergeant Caron joined the Guelph Police Service on August of 2000 as an experienced hire from the Timmins Police Service, where he had been previously employed. He joined our Neighborhood Services Division when he joined our platoon or our service, and in January of 2003 was transferred to our Investigative Services Persons Crime Unit, where he was involved in several major cases involving violent crimes. In March of 2006, he transferred to our Tactics and Rescue Unit as a constable, where he served as a team leader in that unit for 2 years. In October of 2015, he was promoted to the rank of sergeant and was assigned to the Neighborhood Services Division of C Platoon, where I had the privilege of working with him as one of my sergeants. January of 2018 Staff Sergeant Caron was transferred to the Traffic and School Safety Unit, where he served as the sergeant in charge of the Traffic and School Safety Unit. January of 2019, Sergeant Caron transferred to the Tactics and Rescue Unit as a sergeant of one of two, serving a member or leading members of 12 and 2 K9 members. Then in April of 2021, Staff Sergeant Caron was promoted and remains in the Tactic and Rescue Unit pending the results of our current promotional competition. Staff Sergeant Caron will also be recognized this year at our virtual awards ceremony with a long service award, having completed 20 years of policing. Dave, congratulations on your promotion to the rank of Staff Sergeant. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. And on behalf of the board, I'd like to congratulate Staff Sergeant Hasham and Staff Sergeant Caron. And I'd like to wish you all the best in your future endeavors in your new positions. So once again, thanks again. Okay. Moving on, a motion to approve the open meeting minutes dated April 15th, 2021. Do I have a motion for that? Member Kieran and Christine, all those in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. Now may I have an approval or a motion to approve the agenda for today? Rod Curran, Mr. Mayor, all of those in favor, and that's carried as well. First up, on the discussion agenda, and this is the presentation we have today on which relates to the impact presentation from February the 18th. And we have today Helen Fishburne with us, and Chief Executive Officer of Canadian Mental Health Association, Waterloo Wellington. We have Jeff Stanlick, who's the Director of the Impact Program, and Inspector David Doxey as well, who are going to give us a presentation on this. Now, if I go down here a bit, you may recall that at the previous meeting where this was discussed, there were a number of items that the board wanted you to come back and report on. And so you're going to be covering those items today. And I noticed in your presentation, it has many, many charts, graphs, and whatever else. So I'm sure it's going to be of interest to everyone once you start explaining all of that to us. So thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us today on this and follow up on it. And the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much for allowing us to come back. We had a great discussion with you in February. And first of all, really appreciate your support for the program and the value that, you certainly validated the value for the program in terms of what it can offer to the community when people are in crisis with mental health and addiction issues, but certainly the value to the system overall. You raised a number of really great points in our February discussion, ones that we went back to get further information on and drill down. And today we're going to come back and hopefully fill in some of the blanks and provide some further detail relating to the program. And again, with the premise that our hope and dream is that we will extend this program, which currently operates from 8 in the morning till midnight, to a full 24/7 coverage. We've prepared a couple of options for you in terms of what the impact of that coverage is, both financially as well as in terms of service into the community. So with that, I'm going to ask David Doxey from Guelph Police Services and Jeff Stanley from CMHA, who are both program leaders for Impact in our respective organizations, to walk through the report with you and just share some of the highlights. And then we're certainly available for your questions following that. Dave, do you want to go first?
I will. Thank you. Thank you, Helen. And through you, Chair Carter, as the report was shared with everybody here, my goal here, my plan here was to perhaps highlight some of the key pieces of information that are in the report itself, and then of course will make myself as well as I'm sure Jeff, Helen, and the chief as well available for questions should they arise from that. Starting into the report, the report is built on some figures and some tables that we have used to collect the data. Starting at the beginning there, looking at figure 1, which really illustrates the current trends that we're facing here. And when we look at mental health interactions, we see that they've continued to increase over the last 4 years. And when you look at the data itself, it's a 28% increase from 2018 through to 2021, a trend that continues to climb, and we expect that to continue. That trend has led to an increase in the number of people being brought to the hospital, and that data tells us that increase has been 219% over a 4-year period. It's a great number. And that steady increase in mental health presentations is what's leaves our impact resources stretched to the point where they're not always available for calls. This translates into reduced hospital diversion rates. When we look at the charts in 2018, we see that we were successful at diverting 82.3% of persons from attending the hospital, compared to 2021, when we're only able to divert 30.2%. This increases the intrusive care for people who are presented at the hospital, resulting in increased costs to our overall health system. Our goal here has always been to provide the optimal engagement and linkages to services, thus avoiding unnecessary hospital presentations that are not only costly, but have the potential to be clinically damaging to those involved. We've always maintained that the success of our impact program relies on the timely responses to mental health calls, providing optimal service at the right time by the right people with the right supports. Moving next to the table 1 and figure 2, they display the results of this trend. Despite lower officer wait times, the increased volume of presentations has led to increased officer time at the hospital. What the information here has told us that over the last 4 years, officer time spent at the hospital has increased by 70%. Adding to this is the trend of the growing inability of our officers to respond to other community needs when they've been tied up with members at the hospital. Moving on to table 2 and figure 3, we examine the outcomes of impact being unavailable between the hours of 12 a.m. and 8 a.m. And the trend line here demonstrates as well a steady increase in calls between 2018 and 2021. The data telling us that increase is 31.3%. Using the client diversion percentages that we have from above, the average wait times show the same patterns as above. Year to date in 2021, when we analyze this information, we're confident in saying that 9% of an officer's annual working hours have been logged at the hospital already. And with an increasing trend, we wonder where that number will end. Examining all of the data that we have here, it leaves us wondering, are we at the risk of losing all the gains achieved in our partnership to date? Due to the mental health calls increasing without a paralleled increase in impact staff. We also wonder if it's an effective use of police time or expertise spending time at the hospital when it detracts from their ability to respond to other community needs and risks. and whether or not 24/7 impact coverage provides better care for people who need it most, which results in more effective use of officer time and increased wellness, and provide more efficient use of the overall system of care.
Excellent.
So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you to pick up from there.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dave. There are some really great diagrams, charts in the report, and I hope that you all have a copy of that. The following page there is describes some of the stories. We've been incredibly successful in the community at not only supporting the police in this partnership, but really supporting the members of our community who need it the most. And as Dave mentioned, the trends are growing, right? And we and now more than ever, through the pandemic and such, the needs are growing in our community related to mental health. I wanted to bring your attention to the cost analysis chart.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Jeff, sorry to interrupt. I'm really sorry. If you were to share your screen, maybe those folks who are live streaming could see this chart, because I know the board, we all have copies, but the public watching probably can't see this. Sorry, Jeff, I apologize.
No problem. That's a great idea. So is that is somebody sharing that then? Or did you want me to share it?
Yeah, you can share yours, I think. That should work. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you.
All right, can folks see that?
We could see it, Jeff, and then it disappeared. Now we can just see your screen. Oh, there it is. It's back.
All right, how's
Perfect.
that? I'm just going to look at the screen next to me here, but so I'll just bring your attention to the cost analysis piece of the presentation here. So this is really illustrates what it would take for us to expand the impact program to really look at a 24/7 coverage. So our current staff complement, if you look on the top left section here, is we have seven employees. Option A is if we were to add an additional 7, and then option B is with an additional 13 to the current 7. And then if you look over to the right of that, the additional funding needed illustrates the two different options. So if we begin with option A, we have a annual cost or need for additional funding of just shy of $850,000. There's a slightly higher cost for the initial year, for the year one cost, just with the startup computer, cell phones, and hardware costs. Option 2, and again, this is with an additional 13 staff in the complement, as well as a leadership member to oversee the clinical support of the CMHA workers in impact. That total would be just over 1.5 million annually, with a startup cost of year one at 1.6, just over 1.6 million. And those are the breakdown of the costs. More importantly, really, is if we scroll down, if I scroll down here, whoops. Hopefully you can all see that, is our annual hospital diversions. And so these figures are based on a 75% diversion rate, which is fairly conservative. And it's actually a little bit higher, but we went with that diversion rate of 75%. With our current state of 7 staff, that means just over 1,000 individuals diverted from hospital annually, with a total savings to the hospital system of 1.26 million. When I say the hospital system, it's the ER, emergency room presentations. Option A would be a number of diversions would be about 2,100 individuals from hospital. with a estimated savings to the emergency department of 2.5 million. And then, of course, option B with that would be the 13 plus our current 7 staff would, based on that 75% diversion rate, would look at 3,000 individuals diverted from the emergency department with a estimated savings of 3.6 million. And you may wonder, just in terms of how we calculated the cost for the savings at the emergency department. The average cost to the emergency department presentation is about $1,800, and we brought that number down to about $1,200 for a presentation related to mental health, given that there would be less diagnostic tests associated with a mental health presentation. So it is based on a $1,200 per presentation at hospital. So I think with that, maybe we can turn it over to some questions. Yes, Christine.
Just when you were talking about the approximate emergency department savings, that would be gross though, that's not net, correct?
Yeah, those are, and they are, and they're really estimated savings, right? And it's based on the current cost as well.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Has this data ever been presented or captured before in this manner for other police forces and other communities that you're aware of?
In terms of the communities that we have impact, the police, we've got our Waterloo Region and OPP. We have not presented in this manner with those police departments as of yet.
I'll just add to that.
Sorry.
I'll just add to that our thoughts were, in terms of expansion, that we would start with Guelph. We're seeing some of our highest trends and volumes and pressures in Guelph. And we thought we would start with Guelph and work on that 24/7 expansion, work out the kinks, develop that framework, and then based on that, expand to our other 2 police partnerships, and start small and then scale and spread. So that was our reason for wanting to start in Guelph.
Mr. Chair, I think I saw the chief raise his hand. I didn't know if he wanted to jump in with an answer to my question as well, or I can move on to another one. I didn't want to interrupt the chief.
Oh, sorry. We can move on to another question.
Okay. What has been the success rate even without this qualified data and quantified data from you, Helen, as you have been advocating for more of these types of resources? I do know that a few months ago, there was an announcement, not just for Guelph, but for others across the province to give some more funding to you to add a few more employees to the impact team and other like kind ones across other services. But what are you expecting to try to do with this data now that it's quantified and you can hold it in your hand? Is there sort of any action steps that you're thinking about doing?
Great question, Mayor Guthrie, and I'll start and ask the chief to join me. So we were very fortunate to receive some additional funding from the Ministry of Health, which funds, generally speaking, provincial mental health and addiction services across Ontario. So we received that late last fall, $500,000 into CMHA. And as you all know, that has to be then divided across 3 police detachments. based on geography. Waterloo Region ended up with 3 positions. Guelph had 2, and then Wellington OPP had 1. So great news for all 3 divisions, but certainly did not allow us enough extra staff to be able to move the marker, right? We've talked about the really significant increase in volumes and demand. So we certainly welcome any additional funding. But, you know, just when we look at the Guelph situation, adding 2 additional impact staff isn't going to change the overall picture and did not allow us to extend to a 24/7 coverage. So the 2 options that Jeff presented are really the only way would be able to extend to 24/7 coverage and to try and even touch the demand that is there right now. And I will say, as you all know, through the pandemic, we've seen about a 40% increase in our impact referrals, about 35% overall referral increase to Here 24/7, which is kind of our non-police coordinated access mechanism. So our mental health and addictions referrals are up across the board. We're seeing that leveling off now, but basically this is our new normal. This is the amount of need that we're seeing in our community. And through the pandemic and post-pandemic, we're not anticipating that number is going to drop significantly. We all know that there are a lot of layers to unpack because of the damage caused by the pandemic, and it will be for years to come. So we are expecting those volumes to continue. So we have a great opportunity now with this deep dive that we've done here with Guelph Police Services to take this information and to go further into our advocacy efforts. The chief and I have some ideas about how we would like to do that. And I think the first step is to reconvene our municipal and provincial and federal local politicians for a roundtable. First of all, to do the deep dive with them collectively, and then to really look at, okay, who needs to do what to get the traction that we need to action this request in a very concrete way. So certainly the chief and I are prepared to take this forward, but we need the backing not only of the Police Services Board, but of our local politicians at every level to be able to uncover and unturn every rock so we can look under it for funding. Chief, I don't know if you want to add more there.
Sure. Well, and you're a hard act to follow, Helen. I think the obvious question, Mr. Mayor, is where do we go from here and what's next? And I think that quite literally as a function of like our relationship, the pioneering work that Helen has done over the last many years with our service, but if you combine that with the need, the size of our service and our community, and the fact that we are already embedded and working together, from the beginning, we've really thought that with the proper funding to give the community the support it needs and deserves, we truly could demonstrate what's possible for other communities. Like other communities may not have the agility or the ability to implement things because we've got so many foundational things in place that we really think that this could be a model that would then be replicated in many other places.
Thank you. Thank you to the both of you. And I concur with everything that you just said. So through you, Mr. Chair, I'll leave it if my other board members have any further questions. But I certainly have a couple of motions that I would like to table for consideration by the board and some comments before the final vote or whatever. I'll leave it back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions for our delegation from any of the board members? Not seeing any. Mr. Mayor, you're free to go with your motion.
Okay, thank you. My first motion should be pretty straightforward. It's just a motion that that the Police Services Board receive the impact materials and presentation for information. And I just need a seconder for that, I guess.
Christine Billings, seconder.
Okay.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next one, if you, Mr. Chair, or Cheryl or others would like to wordsmith it, that's fine. I don't want to stay here for an hour to wordsmith it either, because I think the intent will be pretty obvious. But I'd be happy to move a motion as well that reads that the Police Services Board direct the Police Board Chair to work collaboratively alongside CMHA to send correspondence and to engage with opportunities with our MP, provincial ministers, and other stakeholders to request resources for the City of Guelph to obtain a full 24/7 complement or 100% coverage for the impact team within our community.
Second.
I can read it again if I have to, but.
Christine Billings, second. Do you need the motion read again to the others? No, not hearing that they need it read again. I'll call the question. All those in
No.
favor? No? Why?
No, I just had a question. Well, I guess to you. So the mayor's motion has in there, this is direction to the chair. So the chair will be working with, right? So then you're saying it's just automatic then that we don't need it in the motion with respect to our chief. So our chief, Mr. Chair, is going to be doing this anyways and working with Helen and those to make this happen behind the scenes?
Okay.
No,
Yes,
I'm asking through you, Mr. Chair, to the chief. So meaning we don't have to put the chief in here. It's just direction to our chair. So I'm asking you, chief.
Mr. Mayor, were you going to say something? Or
I think that through you, Mr. Chair, I think Christine is just asking for clarity.
Yes.
That even though my motion didn't say the words chief, that he would definitely be still working alongside yourself and Helen and other stakeholders in the community. My omission of the chief was not on purpose, but I sort of, in my mind, I captured the chief under you with your authority as the chair of the Police Services Board. So that entity of the Police Services Board would be working alongside other stakeholders. But I think Christine just needs that clarity from the chief that that indeed will happen.
I look forward to enthusiastically supporting the effort that all of us, yes, I could go on, but yes.
Okay.
You're good, Chris?
That's fine then. That's fine. I just wanted to know if it needed to be included, like the chief or not, and that's fine. So I'm good.
Okay. Can
So
I now call the question?
Well, Mr.
Chair,
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I just wouldn't mind saying just a couple of comments before you call the vote, if that would be okay.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to thank the board for actually requesting for this, as Helen said, a deeper dive into this information. It's one thing to sort of get the feeling that this is what is needed, but once you can quantify it and qualify it with actual data, it makes it that much easier for many more people to understand what the solution is. It's staring at them right in the face. And so I just really want to thank Helen, the police staff, Jeff, others, anyone that's been involved in pulling this information together, because this is not just good information for the police board. This is very good information for our community. And it's very good information that I can actually see many other people across other services looking to Guelph to try to replicate and get this same deep dive of data to qualify and quantify what's going on in their own communities. The other thing too is that I would just want to say that, what was I going to say? Oh, Helen mentioned in her commentary about sort of the new normal probably isn't going to be a reduction of these issues, that the new normal coming out of even COVID is going to be a steady increase. And I just want to just jump on that theme there, Mr. Chair, because from, as we all know, the new normal will never be the new normal purely for the fact that we are one of the fastest growing communities of people in Ontario. We're going to be having thousands upon thousands of more people coming to our community over the next several years under the Places to Grow Act of the province and whatnot. So we are going to be facing not only the calls for more policing from an enforcement point of view, but we're also going to be receiving an increase in these mental health and other situational, other situations that we're going to be facing as a community purely because we are going to be growing as a community as well. And so we are quite, and I'll say the word blessed, because we're quite blessed to have this partnership, as you said, Chief, already established, already going for several years now, between Canadian Mental Health Association, through the leadership of Helen, Jeff, and others, and our police force, that enables us to really be that easy city for the decision makers to partner with us to get this done. Because I want to get this done. I mean, I'm sure I'm speaking for everybody. Like this has to be done. Not I want to get this done. This has to be done. And it's very clear that it's nothing but benefits for everyone involved. So I certainly hope that the province, more specifically, because it falls under their jurisdiction, that they really do heed our request of advocacy to fulfill our request to have Guelph as one of the first cities in Ontario with 24/7 coverage for our impact team. And we can show not only Guelph, but the entire province what benefits will occur if we get that full complement. And the ask will be easier because of this report and materials today. And so I really, really thank everyone for really pulling this together. It's an excellent, excellent presentation. And with that, I'll go back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I don't think we actually voted on your motion yet. No. Okay, we ready for that? Okay, all in favor? And seeing none opposed, that motion is carried. Thank you. All right. Any other questions for our presenters before we go? Peter? Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just took me a second there to flip my mute switch.
Oh,
now,
okay.
It looks to me like from the proposal here, most of the cost savings from this program are going to the Guelph General Hospital, right? Am I reading that correctly? So my question is, why aren't they part of this?
I'm not sure. Possibly, Helen, could you take that question on?
I can. So the Guelph General worked with us as we developed this level of data and worked with us around the costs. They probably represent the biggest cost savings if we increase impact to 24/7, but there are certainly other cost savings as well. And those include, like we're seeing the mental health surge across the system, right? It isn't just people showing up in emergency rooms. It's people showing up in their primary care offices with their family doctors. It's more people showing up within the school system, kids and youth. It's more people who are homeless and need shelter. If we tried to actually look at the costs across the system, they would be absolutely massive. I think we focused on on the ER costs, the emergency room cost in the hospital, particularly, A, because that is one of the most expensive and intrusive costs in our healthcare system. And B, of course, you all know that our police don't really have any other choice when impact is not available, but to take people to the emergency room departments to be assessed. So there is kind of an immediate association there. But I will say there is a significant ripple effect of the costs associated when impact is not available across the system that aren't probably as well represented in this report as we could find. So I'll just be very honest about that.
Sorry, I think you're maybe misunderstanding the nature of my question, though. I wasn't meaning that it wasn't that this isn't a great program from every perspective that we've seen. I'm just saying, I think if we're going to build a business case to go forward to other bodies, that the healthcare system should be here because they're a big beneficiary of this as well.
Yeah.
So in addition to all the great things that's going on, that's my point of view.
Yeah.
Christine, and then Mr. Mayor.
So just to follow up on that, because when you look at the presentation, you do see the benefit in the numbers with respect to emergency departments. So is this presentation going to go to the hospital board? Because we have police services board lending our support. So it's the same presentation. Will it be going to the hospital board? So hopefully the hospital board could lend their support as well. That's for you, Mr. Mayor, to Helen. I mean, sorry, you, Mr. Chair, to Helen.
Well,
Sorry about
whatever.
that, Cam.
It's going to Helen regardless, right? Okay.
Absolutely. We can, I would be happy to bring that forward to Mary Ann Walker and ask for that information to be shared, supported, and endorsed by her board. I know that they would do that in a heartbeat.
Okay,
yeah. Thank you, Christine.
That's great, Helen. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, you're welcome. Mr. Mayor, Chief,
Thank
well,
you.
now it's between Chief Colby and Mr. Mayor, so who wants to go first? I'm gonna let you guys fight it out.
Well, I guess I'm unmuted. I'm unmuted, so I get to go first. Sorry, Chief. I was just gonna, in reference to Peter's question, he's absolutely right. Christine was absolutely right in asking that question. Helen, great answer. But that is actually why I specifically put in the motion that we just approved, and other stakeholders. So the wording in my motion, and other stakeholders, I didn't want to get into sort of naming every single one because I could name about 10 right away and there could be 12. And so definitely they were on my mind when I was looking to write this, but then I realized, well, so is the community health center, and so is like it could go on and on and on. So the reason why I put and other stakeholders in the motion that we just approved was to capture those exact things. So glad it was raised though, verbally for sure, but it definitely captured within the motion.
Chief, you had your hand up, Chief?
Yeah, well, and I just wanted to add, in addition to the discussions with respect to cost savings, I think that Helen and I have had many conversations. The ultimate goal is that we're proactively in a place where fewer people need crisis resources, and we're proactively increasing the wellness and health of our community. And so if we can start here and build towards that with our ultimate goal, then that's our aspirational goal, is to overall foundationally help improve the wellness of the community.
That's a really great point, Chief. And I would just also like to add to that, if you don't mind, Chair, is that we are also wanting to increase the experience of people who receive our service through Impact. Particularly people who have been impacted by systemic racism. So we will be working closely with our BIPOC community to make sure that our response is appropriate, is therapeutic. And again, like every other part of our system, we need to listen and learn. So we are also looking at a qualitative improvement to our service, not just adding more. staff. And I think that's really, really important, especially with everything we've learned over the last year.
Great, thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, one last thing. I just think it's important for me to say this out loud too, is that when another group or another stakeholder underneath the word stakeholder is obviously City Council as well. And so I've always intended to be, after this meeting, sharing this report with my council colleagues, because there is, this is a community response that's required here. It shouldn't fully rest on just police, just mental health, just the hospital. Everyone needs to digest this information and then determine together as a community, how can we move forward to realize these benefits in our community by getting the resources that we need together. And so I will be making sure that this gets in front of City Council as well, at least giving them the information that I can send to them through an email at a minimum, so that they're aware of this topic as well. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for our presenters today? Not seeing any. I'd like to thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Chief Kobe, did you have something? Did you have anything else to add to this? Or are you good? You're good. Okay. I'd like to thank our presenters for coming out today and presenting on this very important topic, and giving us data, because it's one thing to talk to folks. It's another thing to talk to folks with the data behind you and showing all the benefits, the issues, problems, advantages to moving in a different direction. So thanks again for taking the time. It seems like your group is, Helen, your group's coming in more often than you have in the past. And it's not funny, that's for sure, but we're always happy to see you and see your support behind this initiative. So hopefully we'll be successful going forward. Okay, thanks again.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's move on. I was told that I forgot to call a motion on the consent agenda. Cheryl, was that correct? Yeah. Moved by Mr. Mayor, seconded by Christine. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay. So before we get to the Chief's monthly report, we have the operating and capital budget quarterly variance report for information. Chief, are you going to speak to that?
I have the privilege of introducing Lisa, who is going to speak to. Can you hear us, Lisa?
Yes, I can. Sorry. Okay, so well, the good news is, yeah, we finished the first quarter with a surplus of approximately $742,000. This included a salary gapping surplus, including benefits of about $485,000. The one nice surprise that I haven't seen since I've been at Guelph Police is that the overtime was in a surplus position, and we were down 3,865 hours from last year. So that was a nice surprise. There may have been some delay in training, I believe, that contributed to this, but our training was in a surplus of $35,000, and we received $19,000 in revenue from the city for volunteer record checks that we've been supplying at a zero cost to the public. And then our COVID, I don't know if I have that number, our COVID spending for the first quarter was $211,000. that we've been able to absorb within the surplus. And regarding capital, there's been some changes to the capital projects. They're more now by areas than, so we kind of closed the old projects, moved the surplus over to the new projects, and all of the GPS projects are in a surplus, and the only one that's sitting in a deficit is the capital HQ project. So if there's any questions, I can answer on that.
Any questions from the board members? Not seeing any. So that was simply an update. It doesn't require a motion to my knowledge. So we can move on to the next. Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to ask this question right now because it may be the wrong place, but I'll ask it and then you can definitely guide me. In reading through all the reports for today, and I'm on this new iPad here, and I don't want to get off this screen to look at it because I don't know if it will kick me out or not. So I'm just trying to recall. Was there something under this topic that also had to do with like surplus assets, or was that a different part of the agenda?
It was under this one.
Oh, it was under this. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, at least you all know I read the stuff. Okay. So can I just ask a quick question on the surplus assets policy? Do you mind if I ask that through you, Mr. Chair? I don't know who I would point it to.
No, certainly. Go ahead.
Thank you. So my only question on this is, a couple of years ago at the city, there was a new surplus assets policy written for to help nonprofits in the city. And if I could give you an example, and I think there was an example of this given in the report. When our ambulances are getting ready to be at their end of their life cycle, we gave an ambulance to St. John's Ambulance as an example, okay? And so the other thing, though, was to look to help out nonprofits and charities. Was not so much about large items like a vehicle, like an ambulance or a police car, but it was also for like, let's say you have a nonprofit in town that was needing desks or new computers. Instead of them going to auction, and getting, not too much on the dollar for these items, these types of items could also be looked at to be given to non-for-profits and charities in town that may actually need capital equipment upgrades within their own facilities. And so I was just wondering, I know that we get a lot of money to help fund the community account and other accounts through auctions, the bike auction, all the other auctions that go to help with that. And that's a great way of still giving back to the community because we use the funds to flow it back to the community. But has there ever been any policy discussion at the police board level or within the police service level for something similar to what the city was trying to do to also look to help out local nonprofits and charities in town with surplus assets?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm the same boat as you. I remember reading it, but now I can't find it.
Okay.
But
and this could be a takeaway, Mr. Chair. This can absolutely be a takeaway for staff to examine it. We don't have to dive deep into it now, but I just thought I would just at least raise it.
Well, I do know this. Well, actually, I should let the chief speak to this rather than me. But because I remember reading it, but I do know that some of the surplus assets, for instance, vehicles, when they're to be replaced, they are sold at auction, for example, and the proceeds go back into the police budget. But Chief, I'll let you speak to this. You can probably be a little more accurate than me.
Sure. I think you're both referring to 7.6 in the consent agenda. That's probably where you've read this.
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay.
And as far as based on life cycle replacement and things like that, things are generally auctioned off, and that money, Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong, that those resources are put back in towards capital purchases. As far as your suggestion with respect to a takeaway to look at, might there be other options moving forward? Probably that makes sense to leave it there before we could look at it before we go too far down the path. And with that, Lisa, I'll give you the floor if you have anything more to add.
Yeah, so we sell computer equipment, vehicles, things like that, auction and as well on a government website. And anything that was purchased with capital funds, those proceeds are going into the capital reserve now. This changed last year in 2020. So that's going to help offset our future capital ask, I guess. Now, the report also addressed found and seized property. Any of the found and seized property that's sold at auction, it goes to the board community account. But there is and I don't have the policy in front of me on the selling of surplus goods. It's part of the finance policy, and I'm not sure if there's anything in there regarding donation. I know the first thing that we do is we try to get the maximum bang for our buck. So we would have to actually look at that policy and change that policy if we want to look at the possibility of donating. I'm just not sure if there's anything in there on donation.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
So just from a process point of view, I just want to apologize that, I mean, this item technically has been dealt with under the consent agenda. So I feel like, first of all, I owe an apology about that. And so I am absolutely willing to just close this down, Mr. Chair, to move on. I can bring it offline to discuss. And if there was ever a desire to look at a policy change, I'm sure that would need direction from the board to actually go and actually investigate that. So I just don't want staff to think that just because I raised it, that they have to go and do any work. So I think my comment was made a little bit out of order. I'm very sorry about that. Let's just leave it as that. We can move on if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, certainly. Thank you. Okay, any other questions for the finance report? Not seeing any. Let's move on to our next item. And then I believe it's your chief's report on the next item. Have I got that right, Chief?
You do. Can you hear me?
Good. Excellent.
Okay. So I wanted to start my chief's update, my monthly chief's update, by acknowledging that May 25th, next week, marks 1 year since the death of George Floyd. And I think it's important that we provide our community an update with respect to the steps we've taken. On April 20th, a jury in Minneapolis rendered a verdict of guilty against former police officer Derek Chauvin on all 3 charges in the murder of George Floyd. It's important that we remember and recognize the local, national, and global impacts of this tragedy. We're committed to working with our community to address bias, prejudice, and racism, and we support our community's commitment to developing a community-led action plan. We're proud to serve, and we support the work being done. I think it's important to recognize in January of this year, our council unanimously endorsed joining the UNESCO Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities. This network brings together municipalities that want to improve their policies against racism, discrimination, exclusion, and intolerance. This includes a commitment to provide police services that are exemplary institutions for fighting discrimination. We're committed to taking a leadership role to ensure our service and our community can be an example for others to follow in the elimination of bias, prejudice, and racism. An important part of this commitment is demonstrating the steps we're taking to making real and lasting change. We've been working very hard to listen, learn, grow, and evolve so that we can better connect and serve our diverse community. We've learned and recognized that when we interact with an individual or group, that each person is sharing their unique thoughts, feelings, and lived experience. No one person or group represents the views and experiences of our diverse community. Each unique perspective is important and provides an opportunity for us to learn. We also acknowledge that as we work to grow, evolve, and connect with our community, that we as a service are not perfect and we will make mistakes. With the support of our community, we will continue to learn with a view to constantly striving to improve and earn the trust and confidence of our citizens. So I'd like to highlight for the next few minutes some of the things that we've done in the last 11 months. And I think it's important to kind of have the context that these initiatives have happened in about the last 11 months since we had the motion in June from the board. And I also think it's important to highlight this has happened in the context of COVID-19 and all the other variables that we've all been navigating through in the last 11 or 12 months. In the last year, we've had numerous sessions where we've been listening and learning from leaders and members of our diverse communities. On numerous occasions, we've invited members of our community to share their lived experience and their perceptions of police and police interactions with our leadership team, with the goal of increasing our awareness and appreciation of the different realities experienced by all the members of our community and how we can better understand, relate, and respond to these experiences. We also, in the last several months, launched an in-house diversity training video. And the goal behind this video was to find a COVID-friendly way where we can begin the conversation with our community, recognizing that obviously an in-person session where we can share perspectives is obviously the ideal, but we didn't want to wait till COVID was over. We wanted to start the dialogue and the conversation now. So this video that was professionally produced, 4 members of our BIPOC community and leaders in our community were able to share their lived experiences with all of the members of our service. And we'd really like to thank Mr. Stephen Jackson, Ms. Sandra Coco, Mr. Andrew Craig, and Ms. Sinthuja Leon, because they spent their time and they were basically asked the question, what would you like our members to know? What perspective would you like to share? And I'm mindful, I know the board has had an opportunity to see the video, and it's really quite powerful when we can give our members an opportunity to have an unfiltered view of our community members. This video is, which is approximately 50 minutes, is part of the mandatory training that all of our employees have done in the spring. In addition to that, in the last year, we've enhanced our post-OPC or police college training for all of our new recruits. Our training unit has facilitated diversity training for many years, including conversations and visits from immigrant services. This year, we've also added a session from 2 additional people, Mr. Nguyen and Ms. Leon. Mr. Nguyen from the African Canadian Initiative and Ms. Leon from the Guelph Multicultural Festival. And our goal is to continue to expand this to include all of our diverse communities. So our Muslim community, our Sikh community, our Hindu community. Our goal is to keep broadening this so that we can always grow and make sure this training is constantly evolving. In addition to that, in the last year, we launched bias awareness training for all of our members. Essentially, that training it's an analytical process to understand how different things, initiatives affect different people. That was mandatory training that was launched late last fall, early this year. And to date, 95% of our people have completed this. And obviously, I know the board is aware of like leaves and things like that. So 95% of our employees is really an excellent goal, considering that we always navigate through leaves, etc. In addition, our goal is to develop an in-person training opportunity in 2022 that we can have in-person conversations with our members, with members of our community, so we can continue to keep the dialogue going and share each other's perspective. In addition to that, and I know the board is aware, but we're grateful for the support that Ms. Marva Wisdom played as part of on the panel that was part of developing and interviewing the promotion process for our senior leadership inspector rank that was just completed. This is a very valuable exercising that truly does select our future leaders. In addition to that, we partnered with the Guelph Black Heritage Society to secure provincial funding to support their recently hosted anti-racism summit, and we were grateful for that opportunity. In addition to that, some of our members have been actively engaged in many initiatives in the last 12 months. Some of these include our community policing committee, chaired by Staff Sergeant Andrew Goody. We continue to work to really connect with our community, and one key thing that happened this year is a really great connection with Brendan and the Guelph Neighborhood Support Coalition, where we've met with representatives from each neighborhood group with the intention to develop these relationships, but also proactively identify opportunities where we can participate in activities with all of our community groups. We developed a system this year to accurately track our involvement in public and volunteer events, and we had 177 recorded involvements in 2020, which was a 63% increase over 2019, and we're already, despite COVID, despite all the other realities that we're all already living through, over 30 involvements recorded in 2021 year to date. In addition to our community policing committee, our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, chaired by Staff Sergeant Carrie Gale, has had numerous meetings in the last year. We've had so many of our members who have volunteered, who actively want to be a part of this process, of this proactive work to connect and engage with our community. Staff Sergeant Gale sits on the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police working group in relation to diversity, so we can really, not only can we share what we're doing, but we can learn and grow with respect to other things that are going on throughout the province. Staff Sergeant Gale recently was invited to participate in the Guelph Wellington Local Immigration Partnership Initiative. And so our diversity committee is really, in addition to the work that's been done, they're actually going to be developing an internal action plan where we can quantify not only what we've done, but what we want to achieve, and purposefully turn our minds towards how we can achieve those objectives. In addition to that, in the last year, Inspector Caravellis became a member of the Guelph Wellington Immigrant Services Board of Directors. We've also continued with programs obviously on hold, but our Kick Soccer program has continued. And some of the other things that the public probably isn't aware of, but we continue, many of the conversations we had and that were addressed in the motion last year talked about better data, better statistics. How do we know what we're doing if we don't measure what we're doing? Race data collection and reporting. As obviously, as the board is aware, we collect, as required by the ministry, data that continues to be collected for things like regulated interactions, use of force occurrences, etc. I know it was in the consent agenda today, but I'm sure when you read the board package, our Q1 use of force, in the interest of transparency, so our community understands what these things look like, we have a synopsis to highlight kind of what happened, but also now every single synopsis provides the race of the individuals involved. And I think that, I'm going from memory, but I think your Q1 report told you that there were 18,000 and change calls for service. Of those 18,000, there were 17 incidents that led to use of force reports. So that equates to 1 in every 1,060 calls for service in Q1 was an incident that there was use of force. But I think it's that's obviously an incredibly small minority of the calls for service that our members are involved in. And not only that, I think when the board and the community actually reads the synopsis of the events, it gives the context around what happened in those situations. We'll continue to implement things like this. That's a new change. The Q1 report you saw is the first time it's ever included data like that. And our goal is to continue moving forward towards accountability and just ease of understanding for the community, so they can read these reports and understand what it's all about. In addition to all those things, our body camera pilot is ongoing. We will be presenting to the board in a couple of months based on data, not only our data, but data that's been collected by an academic research, the results. Overall, that project was always, I believe we're almost 2 years ago that the board supported that in 2019. That was always done with a view towards transparency, accountability, best evidence. And that we look forward to giving you and the community the results of that. And then I guess finally, some of the other technology things that we've worked hard to evolve and have more transparency for the public. The conversation that we're having right now today is live streamed and is recorded. And that's a level of transparency pre-COVID. All of us would get together every month, and our community didn't have the same opportunity at in-person meetings to participate in this process. So that's one example. Other things including updating of our Health IM digital collection, so people can now share video easier. They can share video in a COVID-safe way. All of these things are the things that we've done in the last 11 months. And we look forward to taking a leadership role to ensure our service in our community can become an example for others to follow. We're grateful for the support of the many community members and the leaders who have worked with us in the last year. And we continue to work all of the work I've just described. It's not the end, but it's the beginning of how we'll continue to evolve and grow down this path. And with that, Mr. Chair, I welcome any questions.
Question? Not seeing any. Whoa. Somebody's echoing. Mr. Mayor?
Not a question through you, Mr. Chair. Just a big thank you to you and the entire service. That's a long list of things that you have addressed, and our community and our service is better for it. So thank you.
And I've said this on a number of occasions, but it's so important that the board and the community realize you see Daryl, Judith, and I every month. We are but the people who have the privilege of coming to tell you about the work that our members do day in and day out. It has been an extraordinarily difficult year for everybody. And I just want to highlight that, because I may get to deliver the results, but I'm certainly not the one who does the lion's share of the work that makes all this stuff happen.
Okay. Nope, not seeing any. Rod, did you have your hand up? No? Okay.
I just have one more. I have one more, Mr. Chair, if you have time for me.
Yes.
Okay. And I also wanted to give the board an update in relation to, obviously, since our last meeting, Upper Grand District School Board made a decision with respect to our high school resource officer program. And so I wanted to give an update on that. On Tuesday, May 4th, which was only a few days after, we met with a representative of the school board in relation to the decision to discontinue the high school resource officer program. The meeting included myself, Inspector Grover from our service, and a number of representatives from the Ontario Provincial Police. It's important to note that we respect the board's decision, and we are committed to the safety of our schools and having positive, proactive interactions with our youth and our community. We are committed to doing everything possible to support our youth. I want to give the board, I have a few updates from the meeting because we haven't met since we had the meeting. But before I do that, I wanted to highlight, obviously there's been conversations in the last few weeks about the high school resource officer program. But in addition to the role our members for years have had in schools, I wanted to kind of highlight for the board, there's a number of other programs that don't just include our resource officer program. And these include, for example, our youth engagement program, which for years has run, it's a 10-week program where 30 to 40 students would spend 1 night a week with our members, getting to learn about policing, getting to interact with our members. We've also for years had our Youth in Policing initiative, and that's where we hire 3 summer students. It's been an initiative where, for example, we get upwards of 75 applications for the 3 positions that we hire each summer. So it's really been something that's been well received, and our members have participated that in a long time. I referenced Kick Soccer. Kick Soccer is a Jumpstart supported initiative that was created by retired Inspector Pat Milligan. And I believe this is the 15th year that that program's been in place, that has literally supported hundreds of our youth. It's a 6-week program that runs each year. And these are, I'm highlighting a few. I can't even calculate the countless hours that our members spend coaching and volunteering in the community. And I really wanted to highlight just for the board, because I know there's been a lot of conversations about the high school resource officer program, but it's really important we remember all these other initiatives that our members support each day. With respect to our meeting, like I said, on May 4th, we met with a representative of the school board, and we discussed the importance of having operational guidelines for the school and board staff in relation to when police are called. The school board representative at the meeting asked us if we are still available to give presentations in our high schools. The school board representative clarified that while the HSRO program has been discontinued, the board recognizes the importance in working with police and hopes to maintain the positive relationships and valuable assistance our members provide students when requested by the schools. So we're currently working, a protocol will be developed to establish how presentations will be requested, reviewed, and ultimately approved by the school for our members' presentation. We've also committed to working with the board to establish a protocol to review, modify our public school engagement and the delivery of our safety-related programs for elementary schools, as the board would like these programs to continue. We discussed how the board representative, school board, indicated that she'd be discussing with the trustees the value of a communication strategy to articulate to our community that the board values its relationship with the police and still welcomes police giving presentations as requested in our high schools that are approved by the board, that are aligned with the curriculum, etc. And we all agreed that was an important action, I think, for the board to take, because I think it's important the community understand the board's perspective with respect to, or the board's position with respect to police officers in schools, particularly our high schools. And that communication strategy, I think it's possible. There's that clarity may not exist right now, and so we're hopeful that communication will come from the school board. And that is all I have, Mr. Chair. Welcome any questions.
Okay, are there any questions on that? I just like, oh, yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So 2 questions through you, Mr. Chair. So when is it effective, the decision of the Upper Grand District School Board? And what happens to then those officers that were placed there?
So So what we're doing, so we're working out how we operationalize the trustees' decision right now, as far as all of that stuff. What will happen with, and we're still making sure that we understand. I'm not being hesitant, but I don't want to give you I want to wait. We're still researching how we're going to deploy the resources that were previously in our public high schools. We will remain our
That's good. Yeah, that's okay. I understand. No, that's totally a fair, through you, Mr. Chair, that's totally a fair answer here. So, I mean, you were just told the decision, and so now you have to figure out how to operationalize that for those that are affected. I totally respect that. That's fine.
Okay.
And actually, now that I think about it, I mean, those members that are affected would probably like to be told in a manner that is respecting their employment and HR, and not live on a board meeting. So I fully respect that to the members as well. Okay, that was my only two questions, but I do have a comment later on, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I just have a comment on the last item, the Upper Grand District School Board, and I think, speaking on behalf of the board, we feel that we provided a important service to the Upper Grand Board, and we're disappointed that they chose to remove the resource officers from the schools. But it is their decision to make, and we respect that decision. And we'll continue to work with them going forward to deliver programs that continue to support effective relationships with our police service. And I would particularly like to thank the resource officers who have spent, I think, Chief, several years now in the schools giving presentations, so on and so forth, because that is probably one of the most important services that our police officers or resource officers could engage in. It's our young people, and but helping them to feel comfortable with police. And that if there's any stereotypes to the police presence, if you will, or demeanor, that would be erased through this contact with students in the school. So thank you again. I'll repeat that to our resource officers. And I think the work they've done has been quite good by interacting with our young people. And I'll just leave it at that. And Mr. Mayor, you had something else to add? No? Okay. All right. So are we good to move on to the next item? Which, there, I got it back, or did I? Yes, okay. I'm working on an iPad too, so don't feel bad. Is there any new business? Not seeing any. Information items, next open meeting is of course next June, and June 17th. And reminder on the OAPSB Spring Conference and AGM, Ontario Association of Police Service Boards, and Rod and myself will be taking part. Of course, it's a virtual meeting, and that's coming up next week, right, Rod? Okay. So, if there is no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Christine and Rod, thank you. All those in favor, and that's carried. Okay, folks, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.